Hi, Scott here with another interview in the Interversity series. Today it's Cheryl, the tiger mum from the Chaser Australia. You'll like this one. Hands on buzzers. Ready?
Tiger mum. We've all heard that expression. But what does it mean? What's the tiger mum thing all about? Well, today I haven't just got a tiger mum with me. It is the tiger mum. It's Cheryl, who a lot of you would know from the Australian version of that very popular quiz show, The Chase. Cheryl, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here.
So, tiger mum. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the chase. How do you become a chaser? I'm assuming you didn't go down the employment exchange.
No, it's pretty much invitation only, Scott. So, I wasn't one of the original cast members when the show started in 2015, but as soon as the current executive producer took over, she noticed that there was no female talent from the Australian side. They had the governess, Anne Hegarty.
Yes.
The wonderful governess, very, very amazing British quizzer. But there was no Australian woman on the show. And she thought, I think we should have one. So what happened is she asked the existing chasers, did they have any lady friends who might be able to do the job? And Issa, the super nerd, he's my longtime friend, and he recommended me and a couple of others. And we all auditioned, and it was a long and grueling process. But at the end of the day, I managed to get the gig, and I joined. And now we've got another female Australian chaser as well, Mara, the smiling assassin. So it's great to see more diversity in our cast.
Yeah. Just for the possibly anyone who for some reason doesn't know about the chase, we'll just explain it's very, very much a quiz general knowledge based show where essentially you as the chaser are dueling with the contestants to try and take the money off them that they've accumulated during the show. Is that a pocket picture of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I think that's right, Scott. We're the villains, aren't we? We're trying to stop people taking home the cash that they've won during the earlier part of the show, and they need to defeat us in the final round.
Yeah. What I like about it is there's no wheel to spin, or there's no box, or there's no sort of bells and whistles. You got to do well if you know your stuff, essentially. Yeah. And that's why your role is so important. So how does it feel? I mean, when I watch the show, you see people there, and then I've done my research, and the majority of the time the chasers win. Yes, they do. Not all the time, otherwise you'd have no show.
That's right.
And it's great, but I think a lot of us at home are, we're on the side of the contestants. And sometimes as you see the inevitability of the chaser catching them in the time allowed, I'll look at the contestant and I'll say, well, there goes your Paris honeymoon, mate. That's not going to happen. Or someone else say, well, there goes your renovation. You're going to have to keep working 2 jobs. I mean, how do you feel? I know you're doing your job, but, it's for the contestants, it's so close, yet so far.
Yeah, well, Scott, I think winning money on game shows is a very unpredictable thing. So no one should sort of craft a financial plan around, potentially winning money on the chase. It is true that, the chasers probably win more than 2/3 of the time. And, I do feel a bit for contestants because we are sort of, we're training every day. We're studying every day. Most people have other lives and they're looking after family. They're going to their day jobs. We train every day to try and keep a standard of knowledge that is fitting of the show. I certainly, I've been on the other side before, Scott. In fact, we first met years ago at a quiz show audition, didn't we? So we've been on the other side. We've been contestants. We know what it's like to win. We know what it's like to lose. And that can be really gut-wrenching and disappointing. I do definitely have empathy, especially if the team has scored quite high and I still managed to catch them. However, on the flip side, I feel really happy for teams that win because I've been there too. I've won money on other quiz shows and, it's all tax-free in Australia. So you get a nice lump of cash sitting in your bank account
It's tax-free.
for half a day's work. And not only that, even if you don't win money, the feedback we get from contestants is that, more than 95% of them just had a fun day out. They get to be on TV. They get to get their kids, their friends, their colleagues, their grandkids around and say, hey, look, I was on The Chase, watch on this day. And, lots of people will throw a pizza party. They'll get their mates over. They'll watch themselves win or lose. You got to be on national TV. You got to meet Larry Emder. And you gave it a go. I mean, look, less than 1% of Australians are going to be on television, right? So whether you win or whether you lose, you should celebrate the fact you had the guts to give it a go.
And you had fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that most quiz contestants, their main concern is not whether they're going to win or lose, as to whether they're going to appear not very bright. Would that be fair?
I think they come across quite well on The Chase. I don't think we've ever had, anyone that hasn't done themselves proud.
Yeah. So you mentioned just before you're having to keep up to speed all the time, and I'd assume that you'd have to delve into things that you really don't have much interest in, except for the fact that you need to know, because questions regarding that topic, and you can't be interested in everything. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely right. Like, I think most people know sports is a bit of a weakness for me. I'm okay on tennis.
I was going to suggest sport, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, I don't mind AFL, but, I'm from Adelaide originally, and that's very much an AFL state. So I'm a bit shaky on the NRL. So, you're right. We have to cover, at least to a basic level, most of the stuff. So, we can do that by reading through newspapers or watching a sports news show. Luckily we've always got our iPhones with us so we can look up facts. And my team that I play with every week is all male apart from me, and they're really good at filling in some of the gaps for sport. So they'll say, hey, did you hear about this in the Paris Olympics? The new sport is breakdancing. That's making the debut. Make sure you learn that.
Mm-hmm.
And I benefit a lot from my male friends. So thank you to all my teammates.
And when you're up there on your podium, are there times you go up there and you think, I'm running hot today, or, do you have your days, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Like if you've got a bit of you're recovering from a flu or a cold, I'd notice that I'm a bit slower. There'll be other days that, I've had a really good night's sleep. I've had an energizing week and I'm ready to go. I still feel a tinge of nerves, Scott, every time I get up there, and, people.
An edge.
Oh, it's just a bit like, I guess the adrenaline is good, right? Because it means you want to perform well and it matters a lot to you. But I've been filming over 5 years, and yet I still get, moments where I'm still a bit nervous. I've got to shake my hands out, do some deep breathing. Because, it's in front of 1 million people, right? You don't want to, like you said, no one wants to go on TV and appear like a dummy.
Just a silly little question. You're up there on your podium. You got a little cubby hole behind that, or you climb up a ladder? I mean, you never get to see that.
There's a little staircase that goes up behind the big Red Sea. And, there is a little spot for me to sit behind there and have a glass of water.
So you're seeing what's happening on a monitor? Or?
I do, actually. I can see what's happening on the monitor. That's how I can engage with the contestants, with the banter, like what they've talked about, what they want to spend the money on. I can connect a comment to what they've just said.
Think up something witty.
Yeah. We get a bit of help with that as well. if we're not able to come up with a joke, that there's a wonderful person there who can suggest jokes, who is much more humorous than me. So thank God for him.
So the fact that you are a chaser, this is a consequence of the fact that you've always been interested in trivia nights and quizzes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, I only got into trivia seriously in my 20s. So I was living in Melbourne at the time, and that was before I had children. So, weekends were relatively free. And one day we saw a contestant call for Temptation, which was the reboot of Sail of the Century. So I went along to that, and I scored surprisingly high. And the producers, they descended on me because back in those days, and even now, Asian female contestant applicants were rare. So I guess I ticked their diversity boxes, and they said, you are definitely going to be cast, because when can you come on? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm fine. You just call me up whenever. And yeah, I didn't win on Temptation. I didn't win my game, but I did win some cash. And after that, I was hooked. I thought, this is exciting. I'm quite a competitive person. I enjoy competitive pursuits in my spare time. And yeah, I just managed to go on quite a few shows and started going to pub trivia every week once I moved to Sydney. I've got a really nice team of guys here, and yeah, it's just a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's the same with, I think Goliath, he was champion on
Oh, he was amazing on
Sale.
Sale.
The Shark.
Yes,
was
he won
on,
a lot of money on $1 Million Minute.
And Weakest Link.
Weakest Link.
I think he was, yeah.
He's been on a few, and Issa did really well on the Rich List.
Okay.
He won a lot of money there.
Okay. All right. Great. So, tiger mummery, if there is such a thing. What do you see as a definition of that?
It's sort of it's become quite a famous stereotype, I think, maybe because of that book, Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mum, by Amy Chua, who's a successful author in the United States. So I think it just embodies the very strict parenting that a lot of East Asian, South Asian parents use when raising their children, a very strong focus on academic excellence, working hard, being disciplined. And also it's now grown to, encapsulating doing well in music, doing well in sports. It's like, I think like a hyper achiever sort of mentality, a bit perfectionist, all about, driving the kid to achieve his or her maximum potential. And I think, honestly, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek for me, Scott. I mean, The name was suggested by my dad because I think we were having trouble coming up with a really catchy nickname. And Tiger Mum's short, it's catchy. People sort of have an idea of what a Tiger Mum is so they can relate to that character, whether they're laughing at the character or whether they were raised by a tiger parent. And a tiger parent isn't necessarily always Asian either. I mean, there are plenty of white or, European tiger parents. It's more the mentality of, drive your kid so hard until he cries. And straight A's is the minimum. I'm not saying that tiger parenting is the ideal way or the only way. I think it has some positive elements and some really negative elements. And for me, I'm sort of poking fun at extreme tiger parents when I make my jokes. Like, they're so overblown, they're so exaggerated that, I hope that tiger parents and children of tiger parents, especially the traumatized ones, can look at that and laugh and say, yeah, I survived that. Yeah, my mum was nuts. And it's good that we can laugh about that now.
Yeah, I suppose my feeling would be something along the lines of, say, you had a tiger mum and say, for instance, they lived near the beach and there's a child there and all their contemporaries after school are out surfing or whatever, that the tiger mum would say, no, you have to go to study or classes or that sort of thing. Is that, you know what I mean? Because the life of a child, most children don't have the discipline to, succeed and do extra work, but it sort of sounds like the engine behind the child, whether they like it or not, driving them to excellence.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way you've put it is very accurate. And what the funny thing is that although I portray this character on screen, I don't consider myself a true tiger mum in real life, because my thinking is that, as you just said, if the parent is the engine always driving the child, then what happens when the child reaches adulthood? I feel that the child has to internally want something themselves. The child has to, they need to want the good grades. They need to want to, be great at sports or be really amazing at music. The parent can only push so far. And I want my kids to have that internal motivation themselves to reach out for goals. So I don't push them that hard. I mean, if I was a true tiger mum, then I would have gone down the selective school path. In Sydney, they've got selective high schools, government schools that only accept certain gifted and talented students based on, an exam and some school assessments. And my daughter, she's already in high school. She got into selective school, but I turned down that place because I think it's just, for me, I favor perhaps something a bit more balanced. I don't want her to go into an environment where people are measuring themselves on their grades and basing a lot of their identity on, academic reports. I want her to have a more holistic adolescence. And I feel that she has that at her current school. She's thriving, doing well socially. She's really great at tennis. She's well liked by her peers and the teachers, and she's also studying hard. So, for every parent, it's a personal choice that parents have to make. And selective school might suit other children really, really well. But for my children, I feel that a more holistic path was what would suit them better.
It's interesting you said parent, because we've yet to mention dads at all, haven't we? I mean, where do they fit in with all this?
Oh, dads are so important. And Tiger Dad, he's probably more of a Tiger parent than I am. I think, fathers are absolutely indispensable. And I've certainly noticed, when I've grown up and, my working life, I've noticed that, I think there is a little bit of a hole emotionally when I've had friends whose fathers have been absent. There's something a little bit missing there. And I've noticed the way they relate to men is a bit different when there's no father there for you growing up. And I can see, like, my daughter and Tiger Dad, they're very close. They've got a special bond. And she knows that there's a man in her life who loves her unconditionally, right? And I think that gives a woman confidence in her interactions with men. She'll stand up for herself. She knows what she's worth, what she deserves. And there's no sort of, behavior that might be, undermining her self-worth in order to get a man's love, because she already knows what a man's love is like at home if he's got an attentive and an engaged father. So, lots of respect to my Tiger Dad husband for being very close to our girl.
Yeah, I think just on that, there's been a lot of research in the US about the children of single parents, and they don't do as well on pretty much every metric, unfortunately, as children raised in a two-parent household.
Yeah, I think the research is quite extensive on this point, and most psychologists agree that a loving two-parent home is going to give more support and resources to that child growing up. However, there's no need to lose hope, because the studies have also borne out that if a single mom has a responsible male figure in the life of that child, then that's a very good proxy for a father. So if you're a single mom and you have a brother or a cousin or a close family friend who is able to be there for the child and to provide that sort of male reinforcement, that's going to really help a lot. So if you're a single dad, and say maybe you've been widowed, if you can get, say, your sister or a cousin or a close family friend who's a good female presence for your daughter, then that's going to work wonders as well. And one of the charities that I really love is Big Brother, Big Sisters, because Big Brothers, Big Sisters, they fill that gap in society. There might be some single parent homes and there's a mum with a boy and he's getting a bit wild. She's not able to discipline him. She gets him into the Big Brother program. He gets someone who's really interested in his welfare, an older male who's gone through the training. He's been checked for, working with children checks and all that. And he provides that regular presence in that boy's life. And my own cousin in Canada, he was raised by a single mom, and he was part of the Big Brother program in Toronto. And he's just an amazing person. I feel he benefited a lot. I mean, they didn't have much money, but he got a scholarship to study medicine. He's now working in the emergency department at public hospitals, saving people's lives. And for him to turn out so amazing when his dad was pretty much gone and didn't send money or anything, I think it's a testament to the strength of the human spirit and how we can still help each other when we don't have those traditional family units.
I just think how raising a child or two children or three, how it's hard enough for two people.
It is.
With all the pickups and drop-off and et cetera. So, there's single parents who, they mightn't be single parents by choice or anything. It could be circumstance, I mean, I admire them because it's been said, it's the hardest thing you ever do to raise a child.
Absolutely.
And you get zero training.
Yeah, you got to follow your instincts, don't you, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right. So a big shout out to all the single parents and as a community, let's look out for single parents, right? Like you might meet them through playgroup or church or sporting activities like, Ready, Steady, Go. Let's look out for single parents. Let's support them. Let's ask if they need a hand because, like you said, it's a tough job and it's an important job raising the next generation of Aussies.
Yeah, definitely. So now that you are a parent, a lot's changed since you've grown up, hasn't it? In terms of, multiculturalism for one.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just telling my kids the other day that growing up in Adelaide in the early 80s, like I think there were like 2 Asian restaurants we could go to. There was a Cantonese Chinese restaurant and there was a Vietnamese restaurant. And so it'd be one or the other. And now look at it. Now you can get, Asian ingredients, Chinese vegetables, it's especially in Sydney and Melbourne, which are very multicultural, amazing yum cha. And, I know I'm focused on the food thing because, being Asian, we do tend to prioritize our eating. But it's not just that. I mean, there's martial arts schools, people are learning Kung Fu, they're learning Taekwondo, learning Gatka, which is an Indian martial art in Australia. You've got, the Dragon Boat Festival. There's a Dragon Boat Federation, and I see lots of white faces on those pages, as New South Wales Dragon Boat team competes against Queensland, etc. So we're a much more diverse society now, and, that I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. There's good and bad things come with diversity. For example, it's more interesting now. We've got different types of music, different type of art and festivals to celebrate. And I do feel that on the whole, Australians are very tolerant. Australians are embracing of new things. On the downside, I think I struggle a little bit with migrants who don't have a basic working grasp of English, just because I think, especially in emergency situations like, when we had COVID or if war breaks out, we do need everybody to have a national unifying language. Like, the COVID notices, they had to be printed in 10 different languages. I do think that if you come to Australia, which is a wonderful place and Australians will embrace you with open arms, I do think you do need a basic level of English to communicate with all other Aussies. So I worry a little bit on that front because I have come across migrants who can't converse easily, and I think that would undermine our national strength and unity.
Yeah, I did see something on TV, and it was some people from overseas fairly young, who'd been in Australia a couple of years, who freely admitted had virtually no English because they lived very much within their own community. And then when they were asked, well, what about when you go to the shop and things like that? They said, no, it's easy. You just point or, take what you want to the till or whatever. It's not really an issue. They came across sometimes, and these look like, very young, healthy people. I thought, come on, like, I know if I went to live in France or something like that, on the plane, I'd be learning French. I would have take French lessons before I got there. You know what I mean? Just for the human interaction and being able to.
That's it. And I'm sorry if I came across the wrong way. I'm not being critical of migrants who don't speak English at all. It's more that I feel like if you speak English, it's easier for you too. Like we want you to be part of Australia fully, and we want everyone to be able to communicate and be friends. And it's just so hard to be friends if you can't speak to each other. I mean, look, we're having a chat. We've known each other before, Scott, so we're comfortable with each other. But obviously, if one of us had, difficulty with language, then we wouldn't be able to share our ideas. We wouldn't be able to joke together and laugh together, right? So I'm just thinking, I think we should all have a basic level of English. And I welcome people of all places to Australia. I mean, I myself was born overseas, and I came here, and I think it's been a fantastic opportunity for my family. I'm so grateful.
Yep. I agree with you totally. I mean, we're a nation of immigrants, and the immigration has just enriched our society so much, and it's hard to think about what Australia would be like without the input of people from all over the world in all the ways you've detailed. Just back to being a parent, as we both agree, it's the most important job you'll ever have. How do you see the future looking for, say, your children? Firstly, will the last generations of people who've sort of grown up without the electronic age, without the ubiquitous mobile phones, the social media is massive. That will never be disinvented. We're never going to go back to the old days. So that's only going to get, I think, probably bigger and more pervasive. I mean, how does that sit with you as a parent with still young children?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Scott. I mean, the rate of change that you and I have seen in our lifetime, it's actually mind-blowing, and change is just accelerating in the digital age. So, you and I, we had the analog childhood, right? We would handwrite our assignments and hand them in at school. Then towards the end of high school, I had typewriters come into play. That was exciting. I could type up an essay and hand that up. Then there was word processing once I hit uni. And the end of uni, there was mobile phones. And once I came up to work, there was internet-enabled phones. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on. And I think it's challenging because human beings, we're so adaptable. However, I feel like we've outrun ourselves with technology. It's like the brain is still struggling to catch up to all these changes. So, for example, for much of human history, people lived in tribes, hunter-gatherers, small villages, etc. So you had maybe, 15, 20, 50 people at most that you knew by sight and that you met with regularly. Now you've got, people trying to amass, 500 followers on Facebook or 5,000 followers on Instagram or get, 1,000 contacts on LinkedIn. And I think I personally feel that digital or purely online relationships are superficial compared to ones where you spend time with each other physically. And I don't even think that a human has the capacity to sustain meaningful and close relationships with more than 50 people. If not even, I think even that is too many. I would say, friends who would, what's the joke? They say your close friends are those who will help you hide a body. There's only 5 people in your life. I mean, I'm not sure I could even get to 5 people who would help me hide a body. So, we seem to have substituted, well, I'm not sure, but it seems the younger generation values a lot of online likes and, pokes and contacts with a greater number of people. But I think we're missing out if we don't have a few friends that we spend time with in person, because that is traditionally how the human brain works. Look, we're sitting here together. I can see your facial expression. You've got the body language. There's so much you miss when you're just communicating through a glass screen. There's so many nuances and emotional cues that you miss when you're just typing a text, right? And that's why we get misunderstandings through emails and texts, because sometimes you're missing that, more than 50% of the communication.
I think a lot of the communication nowadays, there's some massive benefits, but the fact about, a tweet now called X and things like that, everything online, social media or whatever, it's permanent. And we've seen people who've, like Kevin Hart was going to, some years ago, host the Oscars, yet someone trolled back and had a tweet which was regarded as inappropriate from many years ago. No, you can't have the job anymore. And I think, as you called our childhood a analog childhood, I mean, you tell your kids now, I mean, when I was a kid, you might have a box camera and you'd have maybe 12 black and white photographs you'd take. Then you'd take it to the chemist and wait a week
Yeah, to have them
and
developed.
find half of them are out of focus or whatever. Now, everyone is a cameraman. You know, everything is recorded, everything's online, everything's sort of permanent. I think if you go back, say, 20 or 30 years, I was a kid. If I was a kid and someone come back from a time machine and explain life now, I'd think, oh no, that's impossible. You know, like it was just, we're kind of living in, when I was a child, as absolute science fiction. Really, it is. With everyone has a phone. You've got the world in your hand. And talking about the quiz shows, I mean, you don't need to rack your brain. No, just Google it. You know what I mean? I remember a time where you might be at a, dinner with someone and someone would ask about some fact and one of you might say, you know what? It's Sunday today, but tomorrow after work when the library's open, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to look in the encyclopedia and then I'll give you a ring, on your landline or next time I see you. And that doesn't happen nowadays. Or going to someone's home, you think, I'll drop in, knock on the door. Oh, no, they're not there. Write a bit of paper, put a note under the door, call by and stuff like that. All that, it's gone. All the movies nowadays where they're hunting someone down, they're never now because you can find someone very, very easy. Oh, we've got to put this back in the 80s or things like that, because it just doesn't work. And you're 100% right. The pace of change and the enormous, it's so enormous, it's permanent, it's pervasive. Who do you know who doesn't have a mobile? I mean, it used to be for a while there, do you have a mobile phone? Well, as a matter of fact, I do. Now it's watch your mobile.
Yeah.
It's just assumed. And there's even the push to try and eliminate cash altogether.
Yes.
So that when we tap to pay for things, and this is very much a trend in Australia, I'm sure it's the same in the UK and the US, because if we're tapping, well then there's whoever is tracking our purchases and then can focus their advertising or whatever on that. Well, with cash they can't. Yeah, so it's the brave new world.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
large.
you've just pointed out a very important fact. We've actually traded away our rights to privacy by having this mobile on us 24/7 because, Amazon's collecting data about us from our purchases, our payment methods, frequency of buys. Facebook is collecting all sorts of information about us, our political views, our friendships, how we connect with people, what sort of material we want to watch. Google is collecting information about us all the time. Our search history, that's one of the first things that police look at now when there's been a murder. They go back and they find the perp's search history on Google. And if they looked up stuff to do with poison or violence, etc.
Yeah, dumb criminal.
But we've actually abdicated our right to privacy because we seem to have made the decision that the convenience of this little device in our hands and our ability to connect with others is worth the price of paying. The fact that we don't have privacy, the fact that, for many of us, especially remote workers, it's like we're on contactable 24/7. We don't have a disconnect. And I think we need to be, I think Apple's amazing. I've got an iPhone, love it. The wealth of knowledge that's available through Google is only helping educate people everywhere and eliminate inequality to access of, knowledge and wisdom, etc. But we do, I think, need to step back and look at social media in particular and the digital age and say, let's look at these tools, these amazing tools that we've invented, and let's use the tools wisely so that they serve us and not the other way around. Mankind's always been great at inventing tools, maybe not so good at controlling it. Like first we had fire and then, whoops, someone's burned down the village because, haven't controlled that properly. And I think technology is the same. We need to establish our own psychological and social boundaries so that we don't get consumed by it. And one of the things I'm very strict with my kids, no social media. They both have internet-enabled phones for safety and so we can contact each other.
Which is
no
great.
No social media. There's no Facebook. There's no Insta. There's none of that stuff, no TikTok happening. I said, you will not post about yourselves, what you're doing, where you are publicly. You just have your friendships at school and your mates can come over to the house anytime and we meet up for sports on the weekend. But there's no social media happening and my kids accept that. They're fine with it.
Another thing about all this is we used to, and in my other podcast, Child in Time, Growing Up in the 60s, available wherever you get your podcast, I talk in one episode about some Sundays Dad would take us into the centre of Sydney, into George Street. And he used to say you could fire a cannon down George Street. It was just deserted. You could park in George Street. You go George Street Sunday afternoon now and the place is humming. Everything's open and it could be, a Monday, Tuesday or whatever. I've spoken to, people in business. How's it going? Oh, really so busy. Oh, I just haven't got any time. And I might, be wanting something and say, oh, well, look, I'll leave it. It's a weekend now. I'll leave it till Monday to call you during business hours. Oh, no, mate, ring whenever you want. I think, well, you've just said you're busy and yet you're saying, well, I'm available, well, not 24/7, but I've also spoke to a little informal survey I do with real estate agents. I've asked about 3 of them. I said, say I'm looking at a house and you're the estate agent, and then it's about 9:30 on a Sunday night. And I think, yeah, I'm feeling it. I ring you then. 9:30 on a Sunday night, which people would think, you're going to answer the phone and I say, mate, I want to talk to you about that house. I think I'm going to buy it. Would you say, oh, no, ring me back tomorrow? They said, oh, no way. You know what I mean? Like that barrier of
exactly,
sort of quarantining our work time.
Yeah.
And that seems to have gone along with the fact that everyone's available. They're on their phone. And I've noticed too that more and more people say, oh, maybe you shouldn't. No, call them now. And I've even done that and think, well, it's, you know what I mean? That things just seem to be, the lines seem to be clearer when I was a kid anyway. Sunday was sacred, was more the day of rest. When I was a kid, even the local bodgies, the local tough guys went to church. It seemed to be, you just did it. You met people there. It was sort of like a social thing. And didn't have pubs open on Sunday and stuff like that. So, but as I said, the genie's out of the bottle now, and we're talking about how there's certainly potential there for, to adversely affect people's mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know of any statistics regarding that, but I know there can be people that if they don't get enough likes on their post or whatever, that can be, extremely upsetting, depressing, and lead to tragic outcomes. Sometimes of people being cyberbullied and all this kind of thing. People who could be anonymous and all that.
That's right. So
it's kind of like, with some people, it's kind of like they've gone down to the shed and are playing with nitroglycerin, really, So, and as I agree with you 100%, we just haven't had time to take a breath here.
Yeah.
As it's just, just gone like a skyrocket, this, from mobile phones, social media, et cetera, et cetera. So it's something that you're conscious of, and I think every parent with children is probably aware that even just kids who get the video game addiction, they won't sleep, they won't eat.
Oh, absolutely. And people it's not widely known, Scott, that, the video game industry pulls in billions of profit, and I think it's dwarfing not just Netflix, but Netflix plus cinema combined and TV combined. And that's another thing that I tend to restrict quite heavily with my kids, computer games. And it's because the developers have basically done a psychological hack. They know what triggers endorphins in the brain. So they create games that, are very addictive. And studies have shown that, children who spend a lot of time playing computer games rather than interacting with real life people or doing physical sports or exercise, are, as you've mentioned, prone to all sorts of bad mental health outcomes. And I think, being on all the time because of that phone It's exactly what you've said. It's contributed to mental health outcomes, which are poor because of overstimulation, impatience, being able to wait for an answer, to wait for someone to get back to you. Narcissism in the, social media posts always portray you in the best possible light. No one ever posts on Facebook, hey, I'm getting divorced, man. It's always, I got a promotion. Let's put that on LinkedIn. Or, I've got this brand new dress from a fancy boutique. Let's put that on Insta. They always show the best side. It's like a warped, distorted view of life. And life is good stuff and bad stuff and in between stuff. So, if we just think that everybody else is a perfect life and we don't have a perfect life, something's wrong with us, that undermines our self-esteem. And then you've got the lack of accountability, what you said. People post horrible, mean things online because there's no consequences. You might be anonymous or you're hiding behind a fake handle, or worse, you fish. Well, what's that? You catfish someone. You assume someone else's identity and their photo ID, and you catfish people and you hurt people because you've tricked them into, false romantic relationships. And then the right to disconnect. I want to talk about that quickly because Australia is introducing a law, I believe it kicks in August this year, right to disconnect. And I never would have thought Australia would need this law because we've always had great work-life balance. We kick off early on a Friday, right? We go have a drink. We enjoy our sports on Saturday, go to church and hang out with our mates on Sunday. And yet even now, the workaholic mentality has now entered Australian mainstream culture to the fact that the parliament has to pass a law saying unless it's an emergency, you cannot contact your employee outside normal working hours and demand a response. And if you fire someone or demote someone because they haven't responded to you at 4 a.m. or 3 p.m. on a Sunday or whenever, when they're not contracted to work, then there will be consequences for your business. I never thought we would need that. In Australia, I feel we have great work-life balance, and yet here we are in 2024, Scott, where the government has to step in because some employers are contacting people during their dinner time, their family time, their leisure time, their time for religious worship, and expecting an answer. And that's not on because this is the problem with the digital age. I think we're overstimulated. We need stillness in our life. Whether you pray, whether you just go for a walk in nature and you meditate, you consider about what's important in your life. Are you on track? You consider the people you love, you wish them well. I do think you need a few minutes every day, if not an hour, to just switch off from all outside stimulation, have a bit of internal reflection, just give yourself that peace and quiet to, just refresh your soul. And then nowadays, because of, video games, social media, nonstop, employers contacting you at 9 p.m. at night, that's not happening, and that's affecting our mental health outcomes. We should be living in the happiest time of history. I mean, we've got the climate change theme. We've got to work on that. Other than that, medical care is great in Australia. Most people aren't starving. We've had peace and security. We have a stable government, and services here just work. The hospital system, great. The tax system works. The public transport system works. We take for granted things that aren't, available in like half of the countries of the world. Most of our systems in Australia really work. And we have a good life here. We have a great, cultural blend of people. And, we believe in the fair go. We believe in being genuine and being humble and being equal. And yet why are we having these adverse mental health outcomes in our youth? That's troubling to me as a parent. I'm sure it's troubling to you as a grandparent. I do believe that the digital age and this overstimulation is part of it because every human being needs a break.
I think another aspect to it is back with, and I'm not trying to say that when I grew up was better or whatever. It was just different. But things they were simpler in a way that, you'd have like a big TV show and everyone would watch it. You'd have this sort of water cooler moments. Like I think one of the last big ones was like the end of Seinfeld, and there might be some big mini-series and whatever, or a big movie. And most people would know what was top of the charts and things like that. I used to follow it very, very closely, But now if you showed me a pop chart, I'd struggle to even think, is that the name of the song or is that the artist? Beyond sort of Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber, regarding pop stars, most of these people, and I've seen them, they might be briefly on the news and say they've got 3 million followers and stuff like that. I've never heard of this person, I don't know any of their music. I sort of feel for you because you'd have to keep up to date, going back to the chase, because sometimes they'll put a question about, that huge pop hit in 2020, and I'll think, I'm gone, I'm lost, I'm sitting on my lounge, I think I'm guessing, Things seem to be splintered. You've been on quiz shows, you're on TV, I've been on quiz shows, and it used to be, I would say, I was on this. But now, often, if it might come up in conversation, I'll have to explain what the show is and how you can watch it, when I was on Mastermind.
Yeah.
The people say, what's that?
Yeah, well, you're right.
Right, okay, because like the time shifting, I mean, people don't sort of sit in front of the TV. I saw this meme just a couple of days ago, and had a family in the 60s, in the 70s, in their, in the garb, sitting around having dinner. And then it's got one now, and it's still got the family sitting around the table, but everyone is just with their face in a phone. There's no interaction at all. I've seen this at restaurants and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to my wife, there was a family, and they're all on their phones, mum, dad, and the 2 kids, looking at their phone. And I said, some years ago they would have been talking to each other.
Yeah. And do you remember, when you were growing up, Scott, that if you got on a bus, you'd say good day to the person you're sitting next to. How are you? You'd at least acknowledge them. When I walk around the parks now and that, I always make an effort to look at people in the eye as they're passing and give them a nod or a smile or a good morning. Do you know how many people are just looking at their phones or just refuse to make eye contact? I'm like, hey, come on, we're all humans, right? We value social connection. So the other day, I was actually on the bus late at night, and I thought I'd lost my credit card. This very kind Indian student was sitting next to me. He was helping me look, and then after I found my credit card, I thought, you know what, I have a chat. No one, that bus was full, Scott. No one was talking. No one said hi or anything. Look, I get it. It's late night, long day. But I said to him, I said, did you finish work late? Is that why you're on the 9:30 bus home? And he goes, oh, no, I had night classes. I go to university at night, and I had a 3-hour class. And then I said, we talked a bit. He'd been here. He's from the north of India, been in Australia 2 months. And he just seemed so shocked that someone was making chat with him. He actually said to me, I hope you're getting off the bus at Lane Cove. It'd be nice to know you're in the neighbourhood. And I'm like, I'm sorry, mate, I'm further up. But, you have a good time. I hope you settle in well. I mean, we don't have those conversations, and we don't say good morning to each other on the bus. We don't say good afternoon, how are you? Nowadays, if you greet someone or look them in the eye, people think you're creepy, right? Why are you talking to me? You're just a stranger. I only want to text people on my phone. Don't interrupt me. And I think that's a shame. I think it's nice to acknowledge other people, say good day. I mean, that's the Australia I remember growing up, that you knew all your neighbours. You didn't hang out with all of them, but you knew them. Now, I think I know my direct neighbours, but I don't know people 3 doors down. I think we're being more disconnected. Maybe that works for some people. I think it would be better if we went back to a bit of the old school face-to-face contact.
Yeah. On the plus side, though, I mean, we have a family sort of message thing, and we can talk to each other instantly.
Yeah.
A lot of jokes, a lot of interaction. I mean, amidst our busy working days and, whatever, I know there's things on their phone with health benefits, whatever. Often they say there's definitely instances where there could be sort of someone, people have a bit of a ding and there's going to be a bit of road rage, but they turn around and they see people aiming their phones at them thinking, well, this is being filmed. They might have paused to think and whatever. There are so many advantages to being able to contact people.
Oh, absolutely.
Instantly. Just the convenience, but
it's a tool, right? We just have to use the tool wisely. Maybe we don't need the phone on 24/7. Maybe put the phone away for 1 hour before sleep, because that light can interfere with the melanin. The melatonin levels in your brain. Like you said, you're exactly right. The genie's out of the bottle. Genie's never going back in the bottle, but we can modify how Genie works in our lives. And I agree that the technology has life-saving ramifications. Like, some people with epilepsy, that they can set up alarms and alerts. Like, people who live alone, who are elderly, if they don't check in on an app every day, someone will go around, see that they haven't had a fall. No, the benefits of the technology are wonderful. I think I'm just sort of advocating that there's a time and place for it. We need to let it consume our lives. And I think we also seriously need to recognize that Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Netflix, and so on don't have our best interests at heart. They are profit-making corporations. They just want to get more clicks, more time that you're spending on their sites, more purchases so they can drive their revenues and make their shareholders happy. So let's not think that these private corporations have a soul or any concept of our well-being, because there have been documentaries about this, about social media cyberbullying, like you said, leading to suicides, leading to self-harm. And yet I don't think the tech giants have really done that much to rein in some of these adverse consequences. They're like sort of washing their hands and saying, well, we're just a corporation, which is also true. Their job is to make money for their shareholders. Their job isn't to police or parent your family for you. So we need to take that responsibility. And things are just going to keep changing more and more. I mean, who knows what the next big thing will be before you and I go to meet our maker.
Yeah. But then I think it's best to try and be cautiously optimistic. I mean, you're not ever going to put an app on your phone that will hug your kids and kiss them goodnight. The chase, it's not going to be a race of who can Google the answer the quickest and things like that. I know that working in health, that even though there's, you can have operations by robots and things like that, but the person's unconscious, but they'll never, for instance, it's an absolute impossibility forever, I think, to ever say have a nurse robot. It's just not going to work. And I hope that just our humanity, sort of wins the day. So, look, Cheryl, it's been great. I think we've solved a lot of the world's problems there, haven't we? Found out a lot more about you, the chaser, and being a tiger mum. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And thanks very much.
Thanks, Scott. It's absolutely honor. I love to discuss these issues. I think, thinking more about some of these things is only going to benefit us.
Yes, indeed.